Hey everybody, welcome back to the Headway Podcast. I'm Shane, your host, and joining me is co-host Rachel.
Hey everyone. Today we have a special treat for our listeners. It's our first ever one-on-one interview with a client and their personal story.
So our guest today is Sharon Fitzharris. Sharon will be discussing coping strategies with us. Let's meet her.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I had a stroke in December 2020, cerebral venous sinus thrombosis.
So Sharon, how are you?
I'm good.
How's things?
Yeah,
Thanks
good.
for coming today. So Sharon, the first question I have for you is, can you share with us how your brain injury has impacted your daily life and your routines? And how have you adapted to these changes over time?
I suppose in a nutshell, the way it has affected my life is fatigue is a massive thing for me. So on a day-to-day basis, I wake up in the morning and I don't know how my day's going to go. I could be awake at 8:30 in the morning, have a shower, have my breakfast, and then all of a sudden by 10 or 11 in the morning, I'm wrecked. And I might have to go and have a lie down for half an hour, and it's not how my day was planned out. So that can be very frustrating. So my energy levels, they go up and down depending on the day, and it can vary, really can vary. So if I'm planning a day, we'll say if I have something coming up, for example, the podcast today, I had to really plan for that yesterday to be able to get through the day today. So that's an example, I guess. My ability to work has definitely been affected by my brain injury in many ways. I suppose cognitively, memory-wise, it's been a big thing for me. How long it takes me now to complete a job that I would have been able to do before. So it's just, there's numerous things there affecting the ability to work. My ability to socialise and go out and have a coffee with friends, or being able to go for a walk with family members, that kind of thing is affected. My ability to drive. I've had to sell my car since my brain injury because of epilepsy that I've got off the back of my stroke. And another one then is small things like housework. I used to be able to do a lot of housework around the house, and that's something now that I can't do on a daily basis anymore. If I do a little bit of housework, then it goes back to the fatigue again. It drains my energy levels. So that's how my life's affected, really.
So you went through a lot of changes. And just thinking back to the emotional challenges then and managing the cognitive challenges as well, what coping strategies have you found most effective then in managing them when it came to your brain injury?
I think a big one for me is listening to my body. So I think that's really important, and it took me a long time to do that. And when I say listening to my body, I guess I mean resting. My body tells me when I need to rest, be it through headache, my eyes getting tired, and a new thing which I never realised happens before is that my brain gets tired. And something as well, there's fatigue where your body is tired, and then there's fatigue where your brain is tired. So they're two different things. And I know that some of the other brain injury survivors and stroke survivors, that's something that they relate to as well. We've had those conversations. And I don't know if people outside of our world, I guess we'll say, I don't know if they can relate to that. But yeah, rest is definitely a coping mechanism for me. I think if I say we as a group, but when we have a rest, we come back as different people after even half an hour. Those energy levels just grow. It's like a battery. The battery goes low, it goes red, and then if you rest, it goes back up to green, or it goes back up to amber.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah. I think asking for help is another big coping strategy. My mum is great. When I need help, I'll ask for help around the house. Small things like if she wouldn't mind making my bed that day. It sounds awful as a 35-year-old asking your mum, would you mind making your bed? But if I have a day where I have a headache or I'm just really fatigued, that can mean the world to me, just to get something small like that as a little bit of help. And now as I can't drive as well, just small things like asking my dad if he could drive me down to the grocery shop to pick up a few bits instead of having to walk down, and because that can add to my fatigue as well, my energy levels. So just to lean into people that are there to help you.
Yeah, just linking back to what you were saying earlier on about like your group and the community of people with brain injuries. Have you ever encountered any like stigmas around brain injuries, and how did you navigate them in your personal life and the interactions you'd have?
I think, yeah, there's definitely a preconceived idea about people with brain injuries. And again, speaking to other people that I've met through Headway that have brain injuries, I think people think that based on your age, especially for stroke, they think a lot of older people have had strokes. And when they see someone in their 20s, maybe their 30s, and they've had a stroke, they think, and they say, oh God, you're too young to have had a stroke. And you're looking at them going, well, I'm not. Again, another thing is they think because you've had a brain injury that you have lost your mobility, or that you've lost your ability to speak, or that you would be wheelchair bound, which sometimes is the case. But a lot of times it isn't the case. So they've got that preconception of you even before they might meet you. And a lot of brain injury survivors or brain injury patients, they have invisible disabilities. And that's the case. And that can be very difficult as a brain injury survivor. So it can be frustrating at times that people have this preconceived perception of you. So yeah, it can be very difficult, especially on public transport and that kind of thing. Because I have epilepsy, and my epilepsy you wouldn't know because sometimes my seizures are focal, which means that I could be having a seizure but you'd never know to look at me, because it's to do with my ears and sensory. But I might need a seat on the train, and if I was to ask an older person could I sit down, they'd be looking at me going, what's wrong with this person? Why does she want to sit down? And the cheek of her asking me if I can sit down, or if she can sit down. Yeah.
That's definitely frustrating. I can imagine how frustrating that can be for you.
Yeah.
And in moments of, say, frustration or feeling overwhelmed, do you have any techniques that you could rely on to regain a sense of calm and control?
I struggled a lot with that at the beginning of my recovery. And then I did the CFT course with Headway. So that's the compassion focused therapy course. And within that course, there was a lot of other there was a lot of other brain injury survivors. I think there was maybe 10 of us in the course. And we learned how to be compassionate towards ourselves and how to kind of manage in that kind of situation. So we looked at our threat system, our drive system and our soothing systems. So it was kind of to identify a threat, and then if we felt like that, like you're saying, if we felt kind of stressed out or that, or we felt a threat, how to soothe yourself in that situation. And so I really kind of tried to do that. I really kind of try to breathe or try to find something in a situation like that helps me through. So I would highly recommend the CFT course in Headway. I've heard a lot of other, again, I keep talking about all the other Headway people because they're usually here with me in a podcast, so I feel lost without them today. So I'm talking on their behalf.
You're the star of the show today.
But I know that a lot of other guys that I've done the course with and others who have done it in other groups, they really highly recommend the CFT course as well.
Brilliant. And how has your support system, like such as your family, friends, or even medical professionals, contributed to your coping process?
My family have been amazing from day one. Particularly my mum and dad and my brother Eric. They have helped me out with my speech therapy big time, and medication. I could list everything they've done for me. They've been unreal. My friends have been very understanding. Even a good example is at the moment I'm invited to a wedding and the bride is really good. The wedding is in June and she has sent out her invitations and everyone needs to RSVP now. But she is giving me up until the week of the wedding to RSVP because she understands with a brain injury, you could wake up the morning of the wedding and not know how you're going to feel. So she's really, really understanding in that, which is fantastic. That's just one example. Other supports as well have been Headway and the Irish Heart Foundation. Others as well. I've done some work with ABI. And yeah, they've just been fantastic. So definitely reaching out to the services and the medical health guys that are there, I would definitely recommend that.
Brilliant. And can you share an example of a difficult situation that you faced after your injury and how you were able to overcome it using coping strategies?
I guess I had an old co-worker. I was really good friends with him for a good while. And after my stroke, I guess you kind of see the wood from the trees with who your real friends are, I suppose. And I was a little bit surprised to find out that he wasn't the friend that I thought he was. And it was very difficult for me to kind of accept that and to overcome it. It was actually quite upsetting. And it was upsetting and very disappointing, to be honest. So it's something that in my psychology and my counselling I needed to discuss. And it took me a couple of sessions to overcome that and to get through it. I felt a lot of anger, a lot of upset, and like I said, disappointment. So I had to actually, as part of what my therapist recommended, I had to throw the ball against the wall and kind of overcome that. So I was very lucky that I had that outlet from the therapists, and the psychologists came from the Irish Heart Foundation and from Headway. So I was very lucky that I had that to help me overcome that situation. But I think recovering from a brain injury is hard enough in itself, and then to have a situation like that was doubly hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like many individuals, like with brain injuries, experiences changes in their relationships. How have your relationships evolved, and how are you managing to communicate and understand with loved ones?
I think, I guess that was one bad egg that I had that situation with. But a lot of my older friends, I've really grown stronger relationships with them since my brain injury. Some of my best friends have really kind of shown up for me, and we've become closer than ever, which is fantastic. And then I've made some fantastic new friends from the Irish Heart Foundation and from Headway that I've met. And it's crazy to think that I've had a brain injury and they've had a brain injury, and this is unfortunately the way we've met. But I'm so grateful that I've met these people. But unfortunately, that's the way we've had to meet. But yeah, I've gone on holidays to Lisbon with one of the girls I've met through having a stroke. So yeah, it's fascinating how life works out that way.
Yeah. So it is a new life.
Yeah, it really is.
And speaking of that, like, do you engage in any other like activities or hobbies that help you cope with the challenges of your injury? And if so, like, how do these activities contribute to your overall well-being?
After the stroke, I kind of had weakness in my right side of my body. So in my leg and my arm. I didn't lose mobility, but there was a weakness there for sure. So I wasn't really able to work out. I used to go to the gym a lot before the stroke. So I wasn't able to do that as much, and I decided to learn to dance because it wasn't as much on my body. So I took that on, and now I have a few steps. So yeah, doing that now. But then as part of learning to dance, I was doing it with Emily from Dancing with the Stars, and she heard about my brain injury and the story of everything that happened. So she is also a personal trainer and decided to take me on as one of her clients. So now I have a personal trainer as well. So that's also what I'm doing. So yeah, keeping active and keeping busy, and I feel great as a result of it. So yeah, I'm coming back to myself now, how I used to look and also how I used to feel.
That's brilliant, Sharon. Honestly, that's brilliant. And what advice would you give to someone who has recently experienced a brain injury and is struggling to cope with the changes and the uncertainties then that it brings?
I definitely, myself anyway, again, in the early parts of my recovery, I used to get very overwhelmed and I felt very isolated, and I would think, okay, my life is after falling apart. What am I going to do here? How am I going to get back to where I was? And it was just, I felt like I was 15 years old again, and I was living at home with my parents. I couldn't drive. It was a whole just, it was a freak out. And then I realised, okay, I need to take a deep breath and take it step by step. And then became easier. So I think what I'd recommend is setting short-term goals and kind of looking at your recovery as a ladder. So take one step at a time instead of trying to climb to the top of the ladder. What I definitely would recommend is leaning on the services that are there for brain injury, such as Headway. Definitely lean into Headway because the services that they offer are fantastic. The psychology is unreal. They have social groups, which I found really brought me back out of myself and built up my confidence. And like I said, I made some fantastic friends through them. So yeah, 100% lean into Headway. And for a stroke, the Irish Heart Foundation. And I'm sure there's a lot of other services out there for different brain injuries as well. So yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Excellent. And then looking towards the future then, do you have any goals or aspirations, and how do you plan to continue employing coping strategies to achieve these goals despite the challenges that you may face?
I think my main one would, I haven't been able to go back to work since my stroke because cognitive issues, and then I've been set back with my epilepsy. So I think I'm doing a lot of volunteer work with the Irish Heart Foundation at the moment, and I'm doing that to kind of keep my skills that I had while I was working alive, to kind of keep myself ticking over. So in doing that, I'm hoping to maybe get back to part-time work. Hopefully maybe by the end of this year, if not early next year. So that would be one goal. And then another one would hopefully, again, because of the epilepsy, I haven't been able to drive and I had to sell my car, unfortunately, that I had just bought before the stroke. So that was a bit heartbreaking. So it would be lovely to get to the point of medical clearance and be able to get back on the road.
Brilliant. No, but that's actually brilliant. Do you have any like coping strategies then that you feel will benefit you?
I think the coping strategies, I think the personal training and the dancing will help with the medical clearance. Yeah. And hopefully the medication that I'm on will keep me in the right direction. So I'm working closely with my neurologist, and so she is after upping the dose of my medication just last week. And so fingers crossed that all goes in the right direction and that helps with the driving. With the part-time work, I am just going to keep moving forward and keep volunteering and doing what I can. And fingers crossed that one goes in the right direction too. So I'm just going to have to keep chipping away and working away at what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And you're doing great, Sharon. No, brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
So one final question. Any advice for our listeners?
Yeah, I think what I said before, just step by step, short-term goals, and take it one step at a time.
Brilliant.
And lean into Headway.
That's great. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks so much, Shane.
Cheers. So that brings us to the end of today's discussion on coping strategies with Sharon.
And as always, a big thank you to our listeners. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Headway Podcast for more thought-provoking conversations in the future.
Don't forget to connect with us on social media to share your thoughts, questions and experiences.
Join us next week for another interesting discussion. Until then, take care, stay curious and keep exploring the many facets of life after a brain injury here on the Headway Podcast.